I'm Zach Buckle, and because of the investment of time and money that I put into education over the past 3 years, I've been able to scale this 1/3 acre vegetable farm's production from $19,000 to $83,000. By the end of this video, I'm going to share with you how I learned to grow food from people way more successful than me, and how that got me to be successful much faster than if I tried to figure it out on my own. And how the same concept can help you grow food much faster, no matter whether you're a gardener, homesteader, or farmer like me. Hopefully you know who Warren Buffett is, but if you don't, he's a really successful investor, probably one of the most successful financial investors of all time. And he has a quote that he says, "By far, the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself." And I know he's a money guy, but actually in that quote, he's talking about education, investing in yourself, because that's something that doesn't deflate. You can't get it taken away from you. You can't lose it in the stock market. The knowledge that you have or the skills that you have that you learn can't be taken away from you. And I've used that same concept to learn how to grow food as fast as possible. In 2020, that's when I started this farm, and I had basically zero growing experience. I'm not somebody that had 10 to 15 years of gardening experience. All of my knowledge to that point was from YouTube videos, but actual practical experience I had basically none. I had planted some garlic in that field over there, which is sort of useful, but it has very little to do with what I do now. And so I've known about that very quote for a long time now, probably since about 2017 when I started my entrepreneurial journey. And I use the same concept to get to where I want to go as fast as possible. Because I didn't have 10 to 15 years of growing experience when I started this farm, I knew I needed some help. And so I decided to take the Neversink Farm course, video course. And it was about $2,000 at the time. I took it in the winter of 2020. So after my first completely failed season of growing, I took that course, and it was by far the best $2,000 I've ever spent in my life. One of my college courses was $2,000, and I think I probably took about 20 of those throughout my college career. So $2,000 for a video course teaching me how to grow on a scale like this, in a climate like this, was by far 100 times more valuable than my college education. But to some of you, that might sound like a lot of money, but that $2,000 has saved me tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes, and in a relatively short period of time, gotten me to a point where this is actually a business and not a joke anymore. It's not just a garden. We have grown and sold $83,000 worth of food. And I should say sold, because we still have a lot of food in the ground to sell this winter. But this year, so far, we've sold $83,000 of food. And when I talk about $83,000, I don't get paid unless my production of food increases. So even if you're a gardener watching this, $83,000 of food equals thousands of pounds of food. And I'm not just talking about stuff that you probably don't eat at home. It's not just lettuce and arugula and pea shoots. The bulk of our profits this year came from carrots, tomatoes, spinach. Those three crops brought in the most money. Those are all crops that are extremely valuable to you in the garden setting. So even if you're a gardener, I really encourage you to watch this whole video, because it does apply to you. So I spent $2,000 on that farm course. In the course, I learned that I don't need a tractor. I don't need a walk-behind BCS tractor And I don't need a lot of land to grow enough food to make a business, because the Neversink style of growing, and I should say a lot of other farms are growing like this now, so it's not just the Neversink style, but small scale agriculture doesn't require tractors. A tractor would have cost me a minimum of $15,000. That's a used, really low end tractor with a bucket and a tiller. A BCS would cost at least $2,000. And if I had gone into this with no knowledge, I might have thought that I need like 10 acres of land to make any money at this, when that's totally not true based on what I know now. But if I didn't learn and educate myself and increase my knowledge before spending money to try and start a farm and make a business, I would have wasted thousands of dollars in directions that would not have gotten me closer to my goal, which is growing enough food to make a business. And so this farm runs on all hand tools. We don't use any tractors. We grow on only 1/3 of an acre of land right now. It's going to increase, but the actual growing space is less than 1/3 of an acre. And so that $2,000 investment has already saved me, what's the math on that? 17,000. If you want to factor in the land, it's like $50,000 in mistakes, okay? Land around here, and we live in Cody, Wyoming, is anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 an acre right now. And that's really, right now, it's bad. Land's expensive everywhere right now. So the point I'm making is that $2,000 might sound like a lot, but if you factor in how much it saves you in mistakes and gets you to the goal you want to reach faster, that $2,000 is worth $10,000 or whatever you want to, whatever number you want to put on it. I invested that into my brain, and I've watched all of the videos in that course probably 3 or 4 times at this point. So I've it pretty well memorized, and I have the skill now in a period of 3 years to be able to grow food on 1/3 of an acre to feed a couple hundred people. That's pretty amazing. And I would have definitely given up by now if I didn't take that course and I didn't learn the right methods to make this a sustainable way of life, because farming is brutally difficult. Growing food is difficult if you don't know what you're doing. If you spend the energy in the wrong way, you're going to burn out and you're going to quit. And that doesn't help anybody, it especially doesn't help you. So investing in education is the fastest way you're going to be successful if you don't know what you're doing right now, which was me 4 years ago. I did not know what I was doing. So it's really something to think about. And to further explain how valuable that $2,000 was to me, I'm going to show you the money that we've made from 3 crops over the past 2 years. And we grow about 20 to 30 different crops throughout the whole year. So this is only a small picture, but I think it's going to make the point really clear. And I'm going to put the numbers over here, and I'm just going to say the rough numbers because I don't remember them off the top of my head, but the numbers are going to be over here, okay? Tomatoes. Over the past 2 years, we have made over $22,000. Carrots, we've made over $15,000. Spinach, we've made over $8,000. So those 3 crops over the past 2 years have made us over $46,000. And I guarantee you, if I did not know what I was doing, I would have made probably about less than half of all of those numbers guaranteed, especially tomatoes. Tomatoes are ridiculously hard to grow. No way could I have learned that just from free YouTube videos. Tomatoes are extremely difficult. The carrots aren't as difficult, and neither is spinach. But the point is, what seems like a lot of money can get you results much faster. You know, and so that's just financially. Those 3 crops together were about 9,000 pounds of food. So the education that I got from that course paid for itself how many times over now in savings from not buying the wrong tools and money made. So it pays for itself instantly. And the same thing applies to learning how to grow in your backyard. If you invest money or time into your knowledge, you will grow way more food way faster than if you just try to figure it out and do other things. So that's just the farming example and my experience learning how to grow food from the Neversink Farm course. Okay, so I just explained to you how you can pay money to invest in yourself. But another way you can invest in yourself is to spend your time watching free YouTube videos or reading books. Books do cost money, but yes, you could go to the library and get them for free. Books cost almost nothing, so I'm gonna almost call that free. I've been studying YouTube videos from some of the most skilled growers around the world since 2018. The guy I've learned the most from for my context is Curtis Stone. And he has a whole channel now called Off-Grid Curtis Stone, and he talks a lot about off-grid stuff. But if you look at his videos from 2020 back to 2018, 2016, he was doing almost exactly what I'm doing now in Canada. And incredible information about growing high yields of crops on a very small land base. He was growing a farm just like this in the middle of a city on people's backyards, literally. So farming to sell to restaurants on a really small amount of land. I believe he reached $75,000 in sales in a 1/4 acre of land, which is, we're almost at that point here now, but it's taken me a while to get there. The point is, when I say $75,000, that means huge amounts of food yields on a very small space. A lot of what he taught on his channel, or it's still there, you can still watch all the videos that I'm talking about, is focusing on the right crops, crop focus, to maximize the amount of money you can make. But the same thing applies to you as a gardener. If you want to grow high yields of food in a couple hundred square feet, the same thing applies to you. You need to focus on the right crops. That's the biggest takeaway I got from him. And he talks a lot about growing radishes, lettuce, Hakurei salad turnips, spinach, arugula. So half of those are salad crops. That's what he made a lot of his money on, was salad. It's same with me. I make a lot of money on salad, but we also make a lot of money on carrots. Carrots is our number 2 crop. That's a crop you want to be really good at if you want to grow food in your backyard. The point he made was you can't just grow melons or winter squash or just whatever you feel like it in your backyard. If you want to grow a lot of food, you need to really be intentional on which crops you grow for the highest amounts of food you can produce in a small area. So that does mean you kind of have to eat outside the box. You can't just eat what you've been used to your entire life, but I guarantee you a lot of those crops taste really good and do produce a lot of food you could put in your refrigerator root cellar, if you will. I have a whole nother video on that in the past. There's lots of other people on YouTube to learn from for free. My other favorite is Charles Dowding. He's the guy who more or less invented no-dig gardening. His garden is absolutely breathtaking. He does it in England, teaches a lot of the same concepts that I talk about on this channel. If you spend the time to watch videos from people who are really experienced and successful in growing food, you are going to increase the speed at which you're going to be successful at. Because if you try and just garden every year and figure it out without any guidance, I guarantee you it's going to take you 5 to 10 times as long to be successful at reliably growing a crop of food every single year. And the reason I'm making this video right now, and it is December of 2024 right now, is because January of 2025 is right around the corner, and the time to be learning is now. Now is the time to learn how to grow, and it's going to make you so much more successful next year if you do want to grow food, whether you're a gardener, homesteader, or farmer. Learn, invest in yourself. You don't need to spend money to do it. Spending money will help, but it's not necessary. If you have time, spend the time to learn. Learn when to seed your crops at the right time. Learn which crops to grow. Learn which crops can give you multiple harvests from one seed. I have a whole bunch of videos like this already on my channel explaining this stuff and how I do it in our really cold 120-day frost-free growing season. And I am passionate about that alone because there's not a lot of creators teaching in a northern climate like mine, or this cold of a climate. So this is why I wanted to make a YouTube channel. But learning is going to get you to where you want to go way faster than if you just try to figure it out on your own. I'm going to leave a link to my 5 favorite YouTube creators in the description below. Highly recommend you take the time to go through their videos and get as much knowledge as you possibly can for the upcoming growing season, because it's going to increase the odds of your success and keep you growing year after year. I think the biggest thing that stops people from growing food is burnout, whether you're a gardener, farmer, or homesteader. If you get all excited and you either spend a whole bunch of money on stuff you don't need, or you waste a bunch of energy in directions that's not going to get you yields of food, you're going to burn out financially or physically or mentally. And you're not going to want to grow the next year. You're going to have way less motivation. In order to make this sustainable for you is going to be your odds of success. And the best way to increase your odds is to learn from people who already are successful and where you want to go. If there's one takeaway from this video, I want it to be this. If you're new to growing food and you invest your time, money, and energy into educating yourself before you spend money, time, and energy on garden tools, raised beds, nursery plants, and gadgets, you will be successful at growing food much faster. Educating yourself will get you where you want to go much faster than wasting money elsewhere. Every single tool on this farm, I researched for 6 months to a year before I bought it. And the reason for that is I needed to know what I was doing before I spent a lot of money on a tool, because a tool needs to pay for itself as soon as possible in a business. And the same concept goes for you growing in your backyard. And to illustrate this even further, I'm going to give you 4 examples. You just bought a $100 LED fancy grow light, and you've never grown tomatoes before. You start those tomatoes in February. You put the seed in the pot, water that seed, you germinate it in early February. But you live in Cody, Wyoming, which is a zone 5A, 4B. Those tomato plants, when they're ready, which will be somewhere around early April at the latest, probably mid-March, depending on when you planted them in February, if you plant them outside, you run the risk of frost killing them, but more likely they will sit there and not grow at all until probably around the first week in June, if you're very lucky, and they will be stunted, and they will produce half the amount of tomatoes that they would have if you had planted them at the right time. So if you knew the right time to plant them before you spent money on those LED grow lights, you would have increased your odds of success by multitudes just by knowing that. You could have grown them on your windowsill and not spent that $100, and you would have been able to be much more successful. So knowledge over spending money. That's first example. Second example, you go to a nursery and you spend $50 on nursery plants, which in today's world is probably about 10 to 20 plants depending on what you're getting. I've heard that tomato plants are anywhere from $4 to $12 a piece now. But you are planting those plants into a freshly tilled garden, just like how most Americans garden. They till up a plot of land and plant in it around Memorial Day. But since you're new to growing and you don't know much about weeds and stuff like that, by July, the plants that you spent $50 on are growing, but they're also growing next to a jungle of weeds because that's a freshly tilled garden. And there's weed seed in the ground because the years past, weeds dropped lots of seed and you just tilled up the ground. So all of that seed is now towards the surface and growing. And now you just have a jungle and the weeds are taking over. You can't grow food. All those plants are not going to produce because they're losing the battle between weeds. You get demoralized and you just walk away from the garden. That is literally a story I've heard so many times just from customers at the farmer's market. So if you had known about no-dig gardening and set up your garden with cardboard, 6 inches of compost and mulch and invested your time and energy in that, your chances of success would have skyrocketed because you would have avoided all of the problems that tillage causes, and your plants would be growing a lot better by now. So again, knowledge before spending money on plants that are way too expensive anyway. And if you knew how to grow those plants, you would have spent way less than $50, I guarantee it. Third example, you want to start a farm, but you're very new at growing food, never started a farm, never had a farming background at all. And you have access to 3 acres of land to grow on. You think the right way to start the farm is to buy a tractor, till it all up. And that tractor costs $15,000. And you're going to make your own compost. So you're going to save money by making your own compost. But you get manure from your neighbor, and that neighbor's getting hay from all over the place. They don't know where that hay is coming from. So you start making your own compost, you till up that ground, but you find out your first year growing that compost has something in it that you made because it has herbicide residue in it. Very common problem around here, actually around the whole country. And that herbicide lasts in the soil for years. There's this herbicide called Milestone that the hay that the horses ate stays in the manure that they leave behind. And so you find out that tomatoes, green beans, potatoes, snap peas basically are not going to be a cash crop for you because of that milestone issue. So not only have you spent $15,000 minimum on a tractor, you have started to make a fertilizer for yourself that you thought was going to save you money, but it's actually going to cost you thousands of dollars in crop loss, because if you run a farm like this, tomatoes are going to be a massive portion of your income base. So now that income is gone for 5 to 7 years because you spent money in ways, you didn't look into ways to grow that avoided a lot of those problems. You didn't learn first. So some of that might be hard to hear for some of you, but I'm bringing this up to increase your chances of success because I've heard all 3 of those stories before. And it's a lot easier to hear this now than it is after you've experienced it. And you spent 6 months to a year of your time and money into a journey of growing food only to find out that there was ways to avoid huge problems down the line if you had spent time to learn. So the moral of the story is learn before you start, because it's going to eliminate 75% of the problems you're going to have growing food. And again, I'm bringing all these examples up because I want you to be successful, and I want you to keep growing food, not just 2025, but in 2035. And the only way to make that happen is to make it easy for you to get the desired result, which is putting food in your root cellar, in your fridge, on your table, year after year, without a whole lot of effort. And learning is going to get you there faster than any garden gadget or garden tool is going to, guaranteed. And a new resource to get you there faster is online communities. I've started a free online gardening community called Backyard Gardening 101. Link is in the description. And you could join this community to connect with really passionate growers of food all over the world. We have people from New Zealand, from Canada, from all over the US right now, and it's growing every day. Being able to connect with those people is going to help you immensely become successful at growing food on whatever context you are in. And when you join, you'll get a free 30-minute garden consultation with me via Zoom. You're going to get access to my Backyard Farm Launchpad, which is a free PDF guide to set up a no-dig garden in your backyard. And you're also going to get access to free monthly webinars I'm going to be doing once a month starting in January around crop planting, planting, harvesting, everything you need to know from seed to harvest. So if you're interested in connecting with passionate growers from all over the world and all those other things, check out Backyard Gardening 101 at the description. Okay, for my last example, I'm going to need my computer screen to really explain it. But let's imagine you have a budget of $750 to grow as much food as possible. And you decide to spend that money on raised beds. Let's say you're going to build it yourself. So right here, I have the average US cost of materials for raised beds is $25 per square foot, because you need to buy really high quality cedar wood and probably some metal and all sorts of stuff. And that number varies greatly depending on how you do it. But it's kind of middle of the road, because if you bought a raised bed pre-made, it's probably a lot more than that. But let's just say you do it yourself, you go to the hardware store, you buy the materials, it's $25 a square foot. So you build a 10-foot by 2.5-foot raised bed, 1.5 feet tall. That's going to cost about $625 in materials, and not including your time and all that fun stuff. It's going to cost about 1.5 cubic yards of compost to fill it. So I said, yeah, 1.5 times 2.5 times 10 equals how much? 37.5 cubic feet, which is about 1 1/3 cubic yards. Let's say your compost, and this is really cheap, is $60 a yard. And that's if you're able to buy it in bulk and all that fun stuff. If you buy it in bags, it's going to be close to double that. But let's just say for this example, it's $60 a yard. So that's $83 in compost to fill it. Not that bad, actually. So to fill it, you buy 6 nursery tomato plants. Like I said earlier in this video, those are running anywhere from $4 to $12 or something like that. They're getting really expensive depending on where you live. But let's just say for this example, they're $4 a plant, so 6 times 4 is $24. Let's just say you get 11, or basically going to be 12 lettuce plants. Say it's $3 for one of those 6 flats, 6 plug flats of lettuce plants. I think that's around what they cost at the nursery. So that's $6. 3 basil plants, you're probably going to buy 6. And again, like one of those 6 cell plants, flats. Let's just say that costs roughly $3. And you buy some beet seeds, and that's pretty much going to fill out your growing space. Beet seeds, let's say they cost $2. They're probably $1.50, but whatever. So you're able to build the raised bed and you have 25 square feet of growing space, and you are able to fit 6 tomato plants across the middle, 18 inches apart. That's your standard tomato plant spacing. And you have room on the sides of those tomato plants for some intercrops or companion plants, whatever you want to do. But, you know, to maximize your growing space, you fill it up with everything you can. And so you fill up one side with about 11 lettuce plants, 10 inches apart. That's about what you could fit on one side. So you're planting this whole thing out in May or early June, okay? So you plant the tomatoes and all this stuff at the same time. Then the other side, you're gonna plant roughly 3 basil plants at 10 inches apart, because that's what you're gonna have room for, and a whole row of beets. And eventually you're gonna thin those beets out to 5 inches apart, because that's roughly what you need for really healthy beets. And so let's just say everything works out and you've got 15 healthy beet plants, 3 basil plants, 11 lettuce plants around your tomatoes, and you plant them at the right time, everything works well. At the end of the season, what you're most likely to get, now this depends a little bit on your climate with tomatoes, but I'm just gonna rough guess, you're gonna get around 10 pounds a plant, if you're lucky. Around here, it's gonna be worse than that probably, but tomatoes are hard. You get 10 pounds a plant, that's a rough average, depends on a lot of different factors. You get 11 heads of lettuce throughout the growing season. You get roughly a pound of basil per plant, which a pound is a truckload of basil. Basil's really light. And let's just say you're picking that basil again and again and again, making pesto, all sorts of crap all over the season. So you got a pound throughout, or 3 pounds throughout the entire growing season, and you got 5 pounds of beets, because that's about what 15 beets are gonna get you. Each beet at that spacing is going to be, you know, you're going to get 3 beets to a pound roughly, okay? So let's say those beets are $3 a pound, worth $3 a pound, and this depends on some things, but organic beets at the store are anywhere from $2 to $3 a pound, depending on if you buy them in bunches or not. Basil is way more expensive than this at the store, but I'm just going to say it's $1 an ounce for this example, because that's what I sell basil for wholesale, but at the store it's like $3 an ounce. Let's just say it's $1 an ounce, so that's $48. And I'm gonna use, there's a reason for that, I'll explain later. You've got 11 heads of lettuce, $3 a head, a really high quality organic lettuce at the store is gonna be around that price. And your tomatoes, let's just say they're $3 a pound. Store-bought can be $2, but you know, it varies a lot. So that's kind of a middle of the road, low end price, okay? At the end of the day, you've grown 60 pounds of tomatoes, 11 heads of lettuce, 3 pounds of basil, 5 pounds of beets, all worth roughly $276 that you would have spent at the grocery store. Now, if you had known about no-dig and how no-dig gardening works, that same $750 budget could have yielded you 188 square feet of growing space compared to 25 square feet of growing space. And let me explain how that works. So you got $750 and you know about no dig, which is basically just buying cardboard, paper, or just getting cardboard for free, wood chips and compost, and layering 6 inches in your growing space, 6 inches of compost in your growing space, 6 inches of wood chips in your pathways. That budget can yield you 3 25 by 2.5 foot growing space beds in the ground. So we're talking about in the ground growing, not a raised bed. So this is what that same budget can give you in growing space with no-dig gardening. So let's say you do that. You've got the budget for the cardboard paper, the compost for that amount of growing space is about $210. I did the math elsewhere. It's too hard to explain in this video, but the wood chips cost you $180. And this is if you go and buy the compost at a compost producer. So the compost is the same price as above. It's $60 a yard. And then wood chips you buy at Home Depot in bags, and that's That's what this costs. I have a calculator that helps me do the math on that. I'm not going to go into that now. So this is what it costs, and that's if you buy the materials. There's ways to get it for free, but I'm not going to go into that in this video. And then you spend $200 on LED grow lights, actually not even grow lights, just LED lights and shelving units to get you 3 shelves that can fit 2 72 flats each. So that's 6 flats of nursery growing space. For $200, one-time cost, you have an indoor nursery that's going to grow you really high-quality garden plants, and you spend about $100 on seeds at True Leaf Market, and you buy really high-quality potting soil, which I recommend, 2 cubic feet for about $30. And that sounds expensive, but it's not when you do the math on how many plants you can grow. Your total cost is $735. That can produce you, again, these 3 25-foot by 2.5-foot beds and seeds to grow all of the crops I have listed here. So I'm not going to go through this line by line. If you want to pause the video, you can. But this is an example of a crop plan you can put together if you know what you're doing. This is what I'm talking about here. If you know when to plant all of these crops, where to buy seeds, how to start seeds, all of that information, if you know it, you can yield these results in your first year of growing. So again, knowledge over just spending money wherever you want, okay? So in this example, we have these 3 beds producing 2 crops in one season wherever possible. So this first example is spring only. So we've got a spring planting of carrots, beets, potatoes, turnips, arugula, basil, broccolini, celery, cabbage, cucumber, kale, cilantro, dill, snap peas, green beans, summer squash. If you know where to buy seeds, how to grow plants, you can do all of this and not go to a nursery and spend absolutely stupid amounts of money on their pre-grown plants. You could grow all this stuff in your living room. And then if you have the knowledge, you can plant a second crop in around July or August. You can plant a second crop of spinach, radishes, potatoes, carrots, and all of these other things. You could get 2 crops that doubles the amount of food in the same space just because you have the knowledge to do so, and it's all out there for free. If you want to take the time on the internet, you can find all this information. It's how I did it. And then above, I have around the yield you're going to get for that growing space. So each one of these blocks is 5 feet by 2.5 feet. So you're planting that whole area with carrots or beets or potatoes, and that's going to yield you, in this example right here, it's about 15 pounds of carrots in that 5-foot length. 15 pounds of carrots at a wholesale cheap price is $2.50. Okay, that's a rough guess. So just for this example, that's a $37.50 you would be spending at the store that you could grow at your house. Okay, so here is the crop value of all the stuff mentioned here, and then over here is the total, okay? Total per bed for just the spring crops, and then below we've got the fall crops. So your grand total at the end of the year of crop value that you would have spent at the store or elsewhere is around $1,100 in this example, okay? So you spent $735 and you grew $1,100 worth of food. This is how powerful knowing what you're doing can be. You know, in this example, you spent $743, you grew about $276 of food. In this example, you know what you're doing, and you grow $1,100 your first year. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a better deal to me. So anyway, those are my examples of how education can get you results way faster than spending money on the things people normally spend money on to grow food. If you spend the money, time, and energy on learning, you could get to your desired result way faster. And I hope if you're watching this video, your desired result is to grow food. So if you're interested in starting a no-dig garden, check out my Backyard Farm Launchpad at the link in the description. Free PDF explaining exactly how to set up a garden just like this in your backyard. And if you're really serious about growing food, I do have a full seed to harvest garden course that is paid, but it explains everything I just mentioned in this video and a lot more that you get lifetime access to. Link in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.